Let's go build a cargo and passenger port on the coastline of the Space Elevator Bay. It's going to be a continuation of the coastline city expansion from the last building episode, and it will be an important place for doing infrastructure on the city's outskirts. We will build another important highway entrance, build an interchange towards the new port. We will also have to extend the urban railway and a tram line. So in short, there will be boats, cars, trams, trains, industry, and lots of tropical detailing. Welcome everyone back to Asturis in City Skylines, and let's go build all of that. How exactly this project started and how I decided that I'm going to build all of those things. Well, it's actually one of those cases of one thing led to another. So let me just start explaining that. I wanted to first start building a railway station right at the side of the project that we just did in the last building episode. Yeah, fine, nothing, extraordinary. But then I figured, okay, let's just do something interesting. Let's build like a switch in that station area, and let's have just more tracks do something else. Maybe like a cargo track. And what purpose might a cargo track have? For example, deliver cargo to a cargo port, a barge port in this case, so that gameplay barges can pick up cargo there. Okay, fine, but the tracks are pretty high, so we do need some distance, some kind of a loop, like I'm building right here with Network Multitool, some kind of distance so that reasonable grade can be achieved, because of course we need to reach the pier level with these railways. Right, so that basically determined the location of the port. It's not going to be right at the site of the project from the last building episode. Alright, fine. Now we are building a port. How about we just also build a passenger port? Because why not? It's already going to be a cargo port. It's going to be like a boat area, so might as well also add a passenger side to it, right? But if there are going to be passengers, then we also need to bring in some public transport. That's not really a problem because we already have a railway aiming there. Okay, so the project is going to include trains. Fine. But we also have trams aiming there, don't we? Because that's the tram that goes on that fancy bridge that we built that fancy new plaza for in the last building episode, and it's just going to continue along this coastline somewhere, really. So why not just end it at the port? It's going to be a perfect opportunity, actually, for some sort of terminus station because it's going to have like a very good purpose to be there. Okay, so that's trains, trams, cargo port, passenger port. But if there is already a cargo port, there might be some sort of like warehouse area, some sort of light industry, let's say. And light industry needs to be resupplied, probably from highways. So let's also bring in highways there. We do have this coastal highway aiming in that general direction anyway. It would go there anyway. So let's just build an intersection there, or interchange, highway interchange. So yeah, it really just led to one thing, led to another, and suddenly I'm building absolutely everything in that area. It's going to be a place that is going to end the city in this direction. I really have no plans. I really have nothing really to build after that place, and it makes sense, really. I don't want to, like I explained many times before, I don't want to just build some kind of suburbs just to have some sort of quantity outside of the map or outside of the city. So it's just going to be this port, some sort of light industry, very similar actually to what we already did near those dams on the opposite side of the map, and that's just going to, complement the area quite well. Okay, so I explained the motivations and the plans for this area, how it somehow just happened naturally on its own. I just wanted to build one thing and then I have to suddenly build many different things. But let's just now focus what I'm actually doing in here, right? Okay, so at first I did some changes to the railways. I wanted to do some preliminary work to some of the railways. I wanted to see if I'm doing it right or wrong with this loop. And then I just wanted to be sure about it. Yeah, so I don't really want to do these kinds of railways, especially so that it's going to be like temporary. I do already want to have them somewhat final, so that it's just going to make some more sense, and I'm not going to be later in some situation when I need to do some changes to already existing infrastructure, because that's just not going to work with railways. They need to have those radii, they need to have the grades, and it's just best to figure it out at first. So that's exactly what I did. And in the next episode, we are just going to just properly polish those railways with some details around them, another train station, and these kinds of things. Right. So I built that cargo area. Now, that's nothing special. It's just some sort of a decorative pier, really, at that place. Actually, I think the same one as I used for creating that Canadian part of the dam on the other side of the map. And it's a nice looking pier, so why not? Then I brought those train tracks on there. I'm later going to detail them with some kind of prop trains and cranes and crates and these kinds of things. And now I'm doing the passenger port. So I was doing this on the live stream, and someone suggested that I should probably take a look at some of the vanilla buildings, because why not? There were some new additions to the game in the latest patch, I believe. I've never really seen those buildings. I'm not really building gameplay ports in my cities, so I had no motivation. But I took a look at them, and this one is actually pretty legit. It's a good-looking port, first and foremost, but the reason why I picked it was because it already had some kind of a stop for some other public transport. It had a monorail. We don't have a monorail in Asturis. I don't want to build a monorail in Asturis, but it doesn't really matter. It's just some sort of a station. It's perfectly shaped to use it for trams, so all I had to do really was use move it, hold Control or Alt or one of those buttons to unlock the segments inside buildings, delete those monorail tracks, and put my own tram tracks in there. Of course, it's going to be the reversible station for trams, so I'm just going to use the reversible tram track mod and the matching track. I'm not exactly sure right now what it's called, but I already have plenty of experience with that. I have the reversible trams at the Brutalist district, at that sunken end station, and also at the beacon. That was the first one where I used it, and with great success. There I also experimented with elevated reversible tracks. Well, they are not really elevated, they are just surface with, the surface brought down below them. And it works perfectly. So exactly that same thing I'm going to do here. I'm just going to replace the monorails manually with the trams. The geometry I chose for this place was actually inspired somewhat, not exactly accurately, but I was looking at Google Maps at Piraeus port in Athens, Greece, and because I mostly wanted to see the dimensions, some kind of scale. What I'm building in here is maybe like 1% overall footprint of the huge port in Piraeus, but I just wanted to see like how exactly does a port or like a pier for a big cruise ship look, because I have no idea, honestly. I've never seen those in real life, so it was completely new to me. I was in Piraeus like a year ago, but in completely different parts of the port, so I could not really observe it too much. But what was surprising is that these kinds of cruise ships, they don't really require like huge piers, a huge base for them. I suppose that they are not brought in by their own power into these ports, maybe like they are tugged in or something. But the dimensions of this particular passenger bay that I'm doing right here is actually legit from real life. So, well, that's what it is. Anyway, that was the geometry. I just did not really want to do it everything parallel or perpendicular, so that's why I did that angle. And also the angle there is making sense because of that tram stop building, or the tram stop part of that port building, of the vanilla building, because it's already somewhat angled. So I just used that angle. I just recycled that angle, and it created this arrangement of this connection between the cargo and passenger ports. Now, I needed to figure out the highway, because the highway is obviously going to take a lot of space, or, well, it doesn't need to. That's exactly what I eventually decided, that I'm going to build like a compact interchange. But at first, I wanted to just, make this place somewhat compact, make it just make sense. All these different infrastructure things are going to have their own space. So that's what I started doing next. I don't really need to, at this point, define the tram station, or the tram tracks. The station is already defined, but the train station, because the train tracks are very high, so they can just go above everything. That doesn't really matter. But the highway is going to be slightly more towards the ground. So that's exactly what I'm building right here. We have this coastal highway. It's going to be one of 3 vital connections right now already established in Asturis. I think I'm going to make at least 1 more highway outside of the city, maybe 2. Right now I'm not exactly sure, but we'll see in some distant future when I reach the other end of the city. But this one right now is going to be quite important. It's the highway that goes into the interchange from the first interchange build that we did in Asturis. I never finished it, at least until this point, so right now it's finally going to be complete. Right, this highway interchange, what exactly is this? I have no idea. I don't know how this would be called. I just wanted to build something different, something new, something compact. So that's exactly that. This interchange is going to be a circle, and it's kind of a roundabout, I guess, but it's not going to have the roads going outside of the roundabout. There are also going to be these spiral roads. I think that for leaving the roundabout, they're going to be on the outside. Oh yeah, as you can see, I'm building that right here. And going into the roundabout from the highway, they will spiral inside of the roundabout, okay? So it's only going to be, well, not really. It's not going to be just the circle. There will be these ramps on the outside, but they will be very small. It's not going to be like a classic roundabout interchange. It's going to be much more compact because of those ramps, okay? Right, so this is just really the good old techniques for building these kinds of interchanges. I'm just using Network Multitool very heavily. Later, I don't think I'm even showing it in this video because there's no time, but later I'm just going to copy-paste the exact same intersection marking tools markings in these nodes. So on the leaving lanes, on the merging lanes, and inside the roundabout, and everywhere else, okay? Now, I'm just going to set up some things with node controller here, as usual. Again, these kinds of intersections or interchanges are a little bit trickier because they are curved. I wanted to do it in a curve. It's usually somewhat boring to do interchanges that are just completely like 90 degrees or something like that. Yeah, sure, it's so much easier, but in these particular situations, I don't even have those geometries going on there, so I would have to just force them there, and it's just much more aesthetically pleasing if these kinds of interchanges, if these kinds of roads projects are not symmetrical and maybe a little bit more random. I just like it a lot more. Right, now I'm setting up those barge paths. Unfortunately, I was not able to get any barges on camera for this episode. I guess that is probably because the traffic is not exactly all that heavy through this area. I'm also playing around with the transfer manager, setting up the outside connections, so they are somewhat balanced. Maybe this one isn't at this point. I'm not really sure. Barges are quite heavily going on the river for some reason, but from this cargo port, not really. Maybe the cargo port itself is broken. It's kind of wonky to really set them up. You know, who knows? I just try to do it the best I can. Maybe later I'm going to revisit it if I'm really not going to see any barges using this port at all, even in the future when like the rest of the city is being more filled, because that would be really, really suspicious that they would be not using this port. Anyway, so that was the highway, and now I'm going to set up those railways. Like I said, the railway is just above everything, so I can just slap it wherever I want. I decided to make it parallel to one portion of this highway, and it's also going to allow me to do some kind of pedestrian infrastructure, because that will have to go below the tracks. Sure, I could have it above as well, but then the pedestrians would just have to cover a lot of vertical distance. I don't want to do that. So I needed to somehow bypass some of the roads, or at least think about it, because the train tracks are not that high above the highway. Some kind of pedestrian infrastructure below that would not fit anymore. This railway is not really going to go anywhere. Sure, it could theoretically go outside of the map. I really have no need for that. So it's just going to look like it's going to appear as if it was going outside of the map, but it's not really doing that. That's the high-speed network's job, to bring in people from outside of the map. This is purely intended to bring in passengers around the city. That's it. Right, so as you can see, I already built those platforms, and well, it's not really looking like it's gonna be easy to cross all this infrastructure and the entire port and just navigate towards the buildings, towards the surfaces, for example. So I really do have to provide some sort of like covering networks of or infrastructure really for the pedestrians. So I'm using these pedestrian path bridges. Later I'm going to detail them with my own fences, I believe, with intersection marking tools. And in here I'm just going to set up some very simple looking entrances to the platforms. So like I said, the infrastructure pedestrian one is going to go below the tracks. As you can see, it's actually kind of tight to fit all these levels together with the highways. The highway main direction of the highway is not really that close to the ground. There is actually quite generous spacing below the ground and the bridge. So the railway then needs to be kind of tall to bypass all of this, but it already is tall, so that's okay. But the pedestrian infrastructure just needs to go around all of these things, up and above. Right, so then we are going to add these elevators, because it's a nice detail. I'm not really going to make them functional, or well, I cannot even make them functional because they are these see-through elevators, so you would just see people like randomly going up and down there without the cabin actually moving, so that's just looking super weird. So it's just going to be a detail in this place, and everyone is going to be using the stairs. Right now, this entire thing was just floating in the air, flying in the air. I eventually just, created like these concrete blocks below the station and these pillars just to somehow end it. It's all going to be mostly hidden. It's like in a shadow as well, inside of the interchange, highway interchange. It's basically like a dead space anyway. No one is really going to be able to use that green area inside the interchange. So I guess that's okay. Then I'm doing these intersection marking tools, like I said, the fences, and then I'm also preparing this bypass over that interchange. Well, I wanted to talk about that. So this is like a roundabout interchange, not really, but close to it. But why set up a roundabout interchange if I only have a single point of entrance into the interchange area? That just doesn't make sense. Roundabout interchange is completely pointless in that situation. It would be much better to build something like a diamond interchange, like I did on the other side of the city with that logistics center. So I am going to add something on the other side of the interchange to kind of justify its shape, its style, really, and just add this second entrance to it. Now, this is a very interesting place to fill, actually, because it's already defined by the networks. It's already defined by the railway loop and also the highways on one side. So it's creating actually this kind of like an eye shape, and I just need to fill that with some rectangular buildings, rectangular warehouses. So that just created an interesting opportunity, really, to play with some geometry. And as you can see, I decided that I'm going to use those same logistics warehouse buildings because they're absolutely huge. I can just cover a huge area with them, but they just look nice. I really like to use these. They kind of look futuristic in a way, so I really like to use them in Asturis. And then all the empty spaces where the buildings would not fit anymore, I'm going to fill that with parking lots. Exactly the same styles as I did on the other side of the city, with a similar logistics center. So there's kind of some continuity between these two projects, and it's making sense first and foremost because having these logistics centers on the edges of the city, just that's how it is in real life even today. I suppose in the future it's not really going to be different. And using the same styles for them, that also somewhat feels appropriate. Maybe I'm actually going to do it the third time or the fourth time. I don't know. We will see how it's going to look in some other areas further outside of the city. Okay, so that was basically just a rough outline of that logistics center done. I really did not want to detail it right now because I wanted to just finish the port and get some better sense of how is this going to look when it's going to start receiving some final details, which is obviously going to influence the detailing in the rest of the area. I already knew that I wanted to do some sort of tropical, coastal, rocky, green areas on the coastline. So that's exactly what I established right here. As you can see, I'm just filling all these empty places with the forest brush. And then it was clear that I have to do something somewhat similar around the logistics center and inside the port as well. So I'm just going to set up the last pieces of the infrastructure then in here, and then we will just get to all the rest of the details. So, like I mentioned before, this is kind of like an I shape of this logistics center area. And in these corners, in these like triangles, the buildings would not fit anymore. Or if they would be kind of clunky. So I'm just going to fill that with parking lots, as you can see. These are exactly the same styles of parking lots as in that previous area. I'm just going to use the clipping networks inside of this outline made by the curbless networks, curbless on one side only. And then I'm just going to use the decals inside to make them look a little weathered. And eventually, it was completely accidental, but you will see that in the cinematics, there was like an interesting shape going on. Like the overall composition of those like super white warehouses and the solar panels, I guess. And then these black asphalt parking spaces with some interesting shapes. It's not just rectangles everywhere. So I actually quite like that. It was completely accidental. It just happened, but I really, really like how that area turned out. And again, it's just like Asturis, but also things that are common for city skylines. Maybe you don't need to like parking lots or big roads in real life, but I don't know, just building them in the game or using these different colors, using even the asphalt color, which is like usually considered not very interesting in real life. It can just look good in city skylines, especially if you combine it with some other interesting contrasting areas. So I'm quite surprised that these things, I'm quite surprised that it's surprising. Yeah, that's probably the best way to put it. Right, so that was that. Then I just, started filling the area with more buildings, more details, and I started planning how I'm going to continue away from this place. So I figured that there's probably going to be some sort of residential area. There needs to be, really. It's going to be a middle project between what we did in the previous building project and today. And it could have been some sort of office area, but the basic point of Asturis is that most jobs are at the space elevator. That's where everyone goes. So I don't really want to overdo it with some commercial districts, office districts, or even commercial actually, for that matter. But there has to be some sort of suburb, like a lower medium density suburb. But it would look kind of weird if it was directly on the side of a cargo port. So I decided that on the side of the cargo port, there's going to be like a little cliff, which is going to be actually not that little at all. It's going to be reasonably tall and like big on the footprint. So it will form some natural barrier between whatever we're going to do in the next episode and what we did today. And I completely forgot actually on the other side of the bay, but I must also add the beacon again. I think that I already established the lore of the beacon when I first did it, and it's something to do with the space elevator's like guidance. Because I'm thinking that the space elevator is not fixed in the bay. It's like a big ship or something like that. Maybe it's somehow connected when it wants to be connected, but it just needs to reach its ideal position. And that's where these beacons are important, because they are just going to guide the elevator to be exactly where it needs to be, to align it with the flying train path, of course, as well. And that's why these beacons need to be around the bay, so they can like triangulate its position. So yeah, when we're going to go to the opposite side of the space elevator bay, probably for some sort of industry, I will have to put it there. I completely forgot to do it with that stacked bridge completion project, because that's probably when I should have built it. But it doesn't really matter. I can just add it At any point, it's just a single building at the end of the day. And a couple of nightlights, actually, that you will see in the cinematics. These are the finished cinematics. So I really like this place, to be honest. I have no idea how it happened, but the logistics center, how it works with those huge parking lots, it just does. I'm surprised. I'm completely surprised that I'm liking a parking lot, but I do. I don't know. I just do. And also all the tropical details around this area. So this place has everything. It has a huge highway interchange. Well, not really huge, but like huge as in complicated, I guess. And huge parking lots. Those are actually huge. But then it also has the tropical detailing and everything else around it. I like this place. I actually really do like this place. Quite surprising, but I already said that like a billion times. Well, anyway, so the next project that we will do in Asturis will see us completely finish this entire part of the city. I'm just going to do it in one go. I'm just going to fill some of those high density blocks from last building episode. Then I'm going to continue some sort of infrastructure as well. Going to build a new interchange as well, new train station, lots of tram stations, well, 2, and then just some housing. Yeah, lots of housing. And this particular view, even during the day, of course, is finally going to feel much more complete from, this part of the city. And I was also paying attention, close attention, to how this place is going to look from the first-person perspective of the tram. So that's also the reason why I picked some kind of fancy terminus station for it, and that's also why I put that colorful tower in there, because I would really like to do this tram ride during the night, or like almost night, so just the buildings will light up, but you will still see some light on the horizon, and just like I did it with that previous ride a little bit. And that's also why I put that Asturis name on the side of the building, because that's what you will see. Anyway, thank you for watching today's Asturis episode, everyone. I hope you liked it. If you did, then please do all the things below the video, clicking, writing, subscribing, sharing. And huge thanks to the channel members who decided to directly support what I do here and this channel. Many thanks, I appreciate it. Take care, goodbye.